Felton, good morning. Thank you for joining me this morning. Before we get into question and answers regarding a recent broadcast on Bloomberg TV, can you just describe your background and your experience in commercial real estate?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's been about 20 years. And what I do in commercial real estate is focus on the office market as well as investment properties. So in the office market, that's leasing, buying, selling on behalf of clients. Investment properties can run the gamut from, I've sold a few industrial to many multifamilies to office buildings as investments. And so I understand how investors evaluate the cash flows and the risk associated with them.
Well, great, Felton. Thank you for that. Before we get into it, just want to take a few minutes to take a look at Cathy Marcus's interview that she had on Bloomberg Wall Street.
This is Wall Street Week. I'm David Weston. Commercial real estate investments, at least some of them, have had a hard time of late, but there may be signs that we've seen the worst of it. With news this week that Ken Griffin is going forward with his 62-story office tower on Park Avenue, and Bank of America saying it's seeing losses on its office property loans easing. For the perspective of a major real estate investor, welcome back now Cathy Marcus, co-CEO and Global Chief Operating Officer of PGIM Real Estate. Okay, so tell us where we are in the cycle. Last time you were with us, you said it's coming. Basically, the repricing is not quite done yet. Where are we on the repricing?
In terms of the repricing, it's about 20% on average across the sectors. And that can range from something like manufactured housing that has had really almost zero declines to office that's closer to 35%. So at PGIM Real Estate, we've projected that by the end of the day, sort of peak to trough, it'll be probably on average 22%. So if we're at 20, we're very close. And so we're feeling a lot better. And, from my perspective, a lot of the doom and gloom about the sector has been somewhat overblown.
So I'm sure you're not a market timer. At the same time, you have to have some sense of that cycle, because if you wait too long, the prices can come back up and you lose some opportunities. Do you have any sense of where it really makes sense you need to get back in?
We're advising our investors that June 30th could likely be a very attractive entry point. And at that point, it's possible that maybe you're a quarter early, maybe there's one more quarter of some value declines. But in this case, we really believe that it's better to be a quarter early than a quarter late. There's broad consensus that there's a lot of capital on the sidelines that is going to come in as soon as they feel like the values have bottomed.
Very interesting piece that Cathy Marcus had, kind of on the global level. How did you feel about that?
Certainly agree with her on some of the points she raises. The doom and gloom piece of it, everyone's been talking about it, and there are certain sectors of the market that that are struggling. But on the investment side, to actually call the bottom of June 30th, I've been doing this 20 years, and it's really hard to call bottoms and tops. So that's something that, I certainly am not prepared to do. But keep in mind what she is focusing on is kind of the global picture. Our market, very different from the major metros.
Can you go into that a little bit and how it might have, how it might play out in the capital region?
Sure. In fact, there was a luncheon about a week ago of a panel of commercial real estate experts. I put the parentheses in place because there are a lot of experts out there, honestly. Anyone who has done this, has leased or sold office buildings on an active basis sort of becomes an expert. But all three of us were very active practitioners in the office market. And one of them had, our micro statistics on what the office vacancy rate is in the capital region. And honestly, I was kind of shocked at how low it was. This was like only about 3 months old, 12 to 13% vacancy. And, from all the office leasing I've done over the past year and a half or two, it has felt like there's a lot more vacancy out there. There's a big trend of tenants downsizing. In the hybrid post-COVID world, you just don't need as much office space as you did before. In fact, some tenants, one group I worked with in Del Mar, 50-employee company, they were only getting anywhere from 6 to 8 employees coming to work on a given day. They actually went the entire opposite direction of a downsize, and I would say a hyper version of the downsize. They went to one of these co-working spaces that have sprung up. WeWork has been a huge trend in the major metros, never made it here, but some of the local landlords have done that, and what they really wanted was flexibility. It's a 3-year lease. They can reduce or expand the number of offices that they're renting. The all-in cost, occupancy cost for this group, wasn't that much cheaper than what they were paying for 10,000 feet, but they have total flexibility in how they add or subtract offices that they're leasing over that 3-year stretch. So that's kind of an interesting development, and I know all those co-working spaces that have opened up have done very well. But when it comes to traditional offices where you're signing a 3, 5, or 7 or 10-year lease with a landlord, in those situations, landlords are struggling mightily to hold on to their base rental rate. And to protect that, they're offering bigger TI packages, tenant improvement allowances are quite common, as well as free rent. I mean, think about it. On a 5-year term with 6 months free, that's about, if it's the 6 months are added to the term, 6 months on a 66-month lease, that's a 9% discount from the average effective rate over the life of that lease. So, a $20 rent becomes $18, in that scenario when you're looking at, it averaged over the life of the lease. So that has certainly been a big trend.
That very interesting. Thanks for kind of just sharing a little bit of the playbook as it's as it relates to commercial office space leasing. Can we just touch upon the 12 to 13% a little bit, and is that a blended rate in your mind?
Yeah, you can certainly bifurcate that 12 to 13% number, because in the suburbs you've got less vacancy than you do in the CBDs.
CBD
being the downtowns.
Okay.
Albany, Schenectady, Troy. I mean, Albany, much bigger downtown office market than Schenectady or Troy. Interestingly, Troy, has got such a small office market. There's not a lot of vacancy there. Albany, I can't remember what the figure was that was quoted, but I think it was high teens to the low 20s on a vacancy. And there have been large blue chip names that have decided, after being in Albany for decades, to move to the burbs.
Sure.
A real challenge for downtown. Well, and that's impacting the retail, the restaurants that survive on the lunch and dinner traffic.
Sure.
So,
and I'm sure as you focus in downtown Albany, you've kind of seen that shift. The daily commute numbers have decreased significantly during COVID and post-COVID. They haven't returned to anything close to what they were prior to COVID.
Well, there's also the percentage of workers showing up on a daily basis.
Right.
I actually do an annual, not completely comprehensive by any stretch, but an annual inventory of cars parked in suburban office parking lots. And 2 years ago, the average, and it wasn't every office park out there, but a pretty good smattering, was around 27% utilization of the parking lots. And if you want to get in the weeds, most of these buildings were built with 4.5 spaces per 1,000 feet. So what I did was I took cars in the lots, and from the size of the building, extrapolated to how many parking spaces there likely are there. 27% 2 years ago. That has inched up to the low 30s now. I redid that a couple of weeks ago. And where you see some differentiation is, say, medical. Buildings with medical practices, medical office buildings, they've got patients coming in and out. And those occupancy rates are physical occupancy, 50 to 60%. But where it's straight office, you're in the 30s. And so that's, impacting those office tenants when their leases come up for renewal and they wonder, do I really need all of this footage?
Okay.
Let me shop the market.
So Felton, very interesting study. One thing to track vacancy, another thing to track parking. I don't know if there are too many practitioners doing that, and great unique aspect and perspective of the marketplace. Are there any other differentiators in your mind metrics that you focus on in the office market?
Well, there's certainly been call it a flight to quality, where tenants are in Class B, and now Class A is suddenly looking affordable since the market's soft. That said, the price of Class A has gone up as many of the older, say B- to C+ office buildings, particularly in downtown Albany, have been converted to residential. So upgrading your office at little to maybe no additional cost, because there might be a downsize involved, that's kind of a no-brainer for a lot of companies. The vacancy in A buildings certainly lower, and if 12% is the median, maybe the vacancy in A is in the high single digits and B is in the high teens.
Again, great piece of information and kind of a peek behind the curtain on what a commercial real estate practitioner who focuses on office space does. As we wrap up, before we do, maybe just share a little bit on what you think the predictions are for workforce back to work in office versus a hybrid or staying at home.
I would argue that the employees that are most disadvantaged by this hybrid, work from home environment we're living in now, are the youngest employees, the ones that are learning the business as they come into the working world. And the veterans who are the seasoned execs, are in the office on a kind of haphazard basis. You really learn a business by working alongside someone who knows it. And so the pendulum is going to swing at some point, and it might be, who knows when that is. Is that 2 years from now? Is it 5 years from now? But as those seasoned execs retire, I think companies are going to wake up to the institutional knowledge that is that's leaving their firms, and how well trained and how well does the next generation know the business. So that's a long-term thing. Nobody really knows how to call that, but and another piece of it is the strength of the economy. If jobs become scarcer and workers have less flexibility in terms of dictating their terms on 3 days a weekend, 2 days off, that's certainly going to play into it. And the last thing is on the investment piece of it. What are cap rates doing? What are sale prices of office buildings looking like? You sell a fully occupied medical office building with a 10-year lease, that's going to be a cap rate deal that's going to go for several $100s a foot, if maybe. I've seen some, $300 to $400 to $500 a foot, based on, what those tenants are paying and for the length of the term. If you've got an empty building you're selling, those prices have really come down. We just recently sold a nice, I would say B+ medical office building vacant in the city of Albany with parking, $50 a foot. That's the sort of wide disparity that exists right now in the office market. And until you've got more reason for office workers to be physically in the office, I think the Class B office buildings are going to suffer.
Okay. Any advice for those Class B office owners?
Make it attractive for a new tenant and be willing to offer free rent, as well as attractive turnkey fit-ups for those tenants. And when you've got existing tenants, up for lease renewal time, hold on to them for dear life.
Great. Well, thank you again, Felton. Really appreciate your time. Your expertise comes out in full force during this conversation.